Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today I've got a review for the new Amazon exclusive War for Cybertron Siege 3-pack, which consists of Holo Mirage, a Decepticon Impactor, and then the final Powerdasher of the Powerdasher trio, Aragon, who also happens to be a weaponizer this time around. So this is officially known as the Fan Vote Battle 3-pack, because if you don't know, Mirage and Impactor were selected as the new fan vote characters for Siege. And the dynamic of that was to have an Autobot and a Decepticon, and they're fighting each other. Well, if you know the character of Impactor, that might be a little confusing because he's always been an Autobot. He's been, leader of the Wreckers, pretty staunch anti-Decepticon type character. It appears the angle they're going with the new Siege storyline is that Impactor and even the Wreckers were initially Decepticons in this new universe, which is actually kind of fitting if you consider their very violent tendencies. And it's up to Mirage to win Impactor over. That's a little bit of background we were given on the product description on the Amazon listing. Unfortunately, that seems to be the only place it exists, so that's all we have to go off of. So if you're not aware of the unique references that are called out with this 3-pack, Mirage being this, clear blue, like hollow version, is a callback to his ability to stealth, or basically go invisible. And you'll also see that this Mirage has a new head that's been retooled from the regular retail release that looks more like the original G1 Mirage toy rather than the animation model. Similarly, Impactor's been given a new head as well as a slightly altered paint job to better reflect the character from the IDW Comics interpretation of the character, which is what he's arguably more famous for in today's day and age. And then lastly, Powerdasher Aragon. If you don't know anything about the Powerdashers, I recommend you look at one of my reviews of the previous two characters. I cover it in pretty good detail there. Just know he's an obscure character that was not really ever expected to see the light of day again. And he, along with his two teammates, have made a surprise comeback in the form of weaponizers for Siege. So if you've seen my reviews before, you know how they go. We're going to take a look at the packaging, see the instructions. We'll take a look at the toys themselves, albeit in a more truncated manner than usual because I've already reviewed their base molds. So these will be more of a comparison, differences type thing. Look at them in all their different modes, compare them with other toys, do group shots, all that fun stuff. And then at the end, I'll give my final thoughts. So the packaging is actually very unique. You can see it's got two windows here. On the side, you have Mirage. On the side, you have Impactor. And then split between them are Aragon broken down into his weaponizer components. So that's very different. And then you have this really cool artwork of Mirage and Impactor fighting each other, and they're both wielding pieces of Aragon. And it might be hard to tell from the front, but this package is, it's got like an indented shape in the front there. So it's not just your regular rectangular box, which is pretty neat. Down here under Aragon's name, you have this ancient Autobot font, which just says weaponizer, which is what he is. Already talked about the fan vote thing. Regular image of the Ark on the side. Standard Siege image here. And then on the back, you have your renders for the three characters, showing off the transformations. Shows off how, Aragon can become a, battle platform or weapons loadout for these guys. Here, this just says weaponizer again. And then on each side, in Ancient Autobot, it says War for Cybertron. And these guys are specifically numbers 55, 56, and 57. Now, the instruction book for these three is nice and big. You can see you got all three characters right here, and it's done up in that light blue color that they tend to reserve for characters that are either not aligned to Autobot or Decepticon, or when it is a cross-factional multi-pack. Most recent example I can think of was that mini content pack. They did that. And you open this up. Pretty hefty. So here you have the weapon loadouts, and their stats and their names and everything. So the foot portions of Aragon. It's called the CM4 High Frequency Spectrum Disruptor. The chest piece is the C40M2 Neutron Synthesis Shield. You can see it's just all defense right there. The regular handguns that Aragon uses are called RT5 Circuit Welders. The arms of Aragon are called CHVM3 Electro Scramblers. And then his like pelvic area, upper thighs, is called the CLRM2 Thermal Booster. Then on the flip side here, you do have Impactor and Mirage's weapons. Impactor has an Earthbreaker cannon and an HP Energon Mine Blaster. And then Mirage has a C20 Electro Disruptor cannon and a W15 armor-piercing rocket dart launcher. So their weapons are the same as their regular releases, which, you know, makes sense. Over here you can see the instructions for transforming Impactor to his tank mode, as well as Mirage's instructions for his race car mode. Cross cells, compatibility, all that fun stuff. And then here it shows you how to remove Aragon in his, you know, weapon modes from the characters as it comes in the packaging. Shows you how to transform those pieces into his robot mode, and then how to transform his robot mode into his combined vehicle mode. So one thing you'll see is that there is no call out to any of Aragon's like full weapon modes like you had with COG. In fact, there's no instructions for how to transform them into those standard weapon modes either. So that is a bit of an omission, but makes sense considering the sheer amount of data they had to put on this piece of paper. It's already pretty big as it is. All right, first we'll take a look at Mirage's vehicle mode. You can see just the old classic car mode that he's got. Formula One type car. You can have his weapons mounted on top of the spoiler there. You can take them off. This one's a little tight. And you can see that in addition to the predominant translucent blue plastic, he also has a solid light blue plastic, just for, you know, the more sensitive bits of him, which is, you know, it's a good idea because this clear plastic is very fragile, very prone to breaking. So, you know, more load-bearing parts might want to not use that. Makes sense. And this shade of blue is actually something I don't think we've seen on a Transformer toy in quite some time. This kind of harkens back to, you know, makes me think of like maybe Beast Machines, maybe Unicron Trilogy. Very sky blue color, almost kind of cheap looking, honestly. Can't say I'm the biggest fan of this color. Wish they would have done something a little different, but oh well, it works well with, you know, what you got. And it might be hard to see here, but there is actually a number 26 on the hood and an Autobot symbol. And you can really only catch them in, you know, the right light. And you got visages and just all other decals, you know, to evoke the racing car aesthetic of his original toy. And nothing on the side, looks like. And here we have our comparison with the regular release of Mirage, which is done in, you know, more traditional color palette. And the biggest difference you'll see here, aside from the obvious, you know, plastic color difference and all that, are a difference in the decals. You saw that this Mirage has a whole bunch of stuff going on, which again is meant to invoke the original toy. Whereas this one simply just has a big Autobot symbol on the front, little thing of Cybertronian text here, and that's about it. I think you got this, I guess. And the reason for that is because this one is designed very much after Mirage's animation model, which, you know, the 1980s cartoon animation models tended to leave out a lot of the finer details. You know, they're very simplified compared to the toys as far as surface detailing, decals, things like that. So before we even transform them to robot mode, you can see that they're really aiming much more for toy accuracy with this release than they were with this one. Next we have Impactor in his Cybertronian tank mode. And, you know, same things apply to this as the regular release. The cannon can go up and down. The main turret section can spin a full 360 degrees. The treads are fake, but there are rollers underneath, so he can roll along surfaces pretty well. And not much new to see here compared to the original release. Most of the new details are hidden in the robot mode. Biggest things to take note of are the Decepticon symbol and a little bit of construction striping there on the sides. And to show you what I mean, here's the regular Impactor next to him. And you can see they're very, very similar. Though, it looks like they actually have a different battle damage paint mask, which is interesting. Didn't notice that till now. The new Impactor, the Decepticon one, seems to have slightly less, especially along the sides. Which kind of makes sense if you think about it. If this is a younger version of Impactor in this new storyline, he would have less battle damage in theory. But you can see, like, plastic colors, all that are completely the same. You can see that difference. This detailing here, which is the kneecaps in robot mode, which we'll take a better look at in a moment. And, the faction symbol. Though it's kind of hard to tell first glance because his Autobot symbol is purple, just like that. So, yeah. Both pretty solid vehicle modes. Joint tolerances and all that so far are more or less the same between them. And third on the list is Aragon in his very bizarre, multi-wheeled land vehicle. He's very heavily armed, as you can see. He's got big cannons here. So he's got a combination of wheels and treads going on, which is pretty cool. And these little bits right here do actually lift up on a hinge, so you can have them aim upward, kind of like for mortar fire if you want to. And, not the strongest vehicle mode. It's basically just him swapping arms around and laying down, but, it is what it is. Here's COG for comparison. You can see they have very radically different color schemes, especially compared to the other two figures. They're both Autobots, so they do have those generally Autobot-like colors, right? The blues and reds and all that. And you can just see the paint layouts are completely different for them. In fact, you can see here these like window details are actually painted on him, whereas on COG they're just left, still painted, but painted the same color as the rest of his chest. And yeah, again, tolerances are more or less the same. Both very weird looking, and it's obvious, but just like COG, who can separate into two smaller vehicles, Aragon can achieve that same thing, being a retool. And unlike COG, I imagine his individual vehicles don't have their own names. It's just, I don't think any thought was put into that. It's just the result of him sharing a mold. But it's still cool nonetheless. Just adds that little extra bit of play value. Two things I do want to point out on this guy before we transform everyone. One, he's got this really nice painted detail on the bottoms of his feet that COG is lacking. You can see all this here. You got this blue painted, black around the red. Just looks very nice. And then, the feet are mostly silver. One small issue that may arise is because these legs are primarily painted silver, these little connection tabs that kind of slide into this railing right here, they're painted, so they are going to be prone to, scraping if you're not careful. So I would just say watch out for that. All right, back to Mirage. This is his robot mode. And this is where you can finally see the sculpting difference between him and the regular release. This is his head. And like I mentioned, it is based on his original Generation 1 toy. And has been unofficially dubbed his Sphinx head because of its, pretty strong resemblance to the Egyptian Sphinx statues. Very cool looking, very mechanical. Very old school 80s robot looking. All of his tolerances are just pretty much exactly the same as they are in the regular Mirage, so no issue there. Probably won't see me transforming this guy much because I'm really legitimately worried about breaking him, just because so much of him is made of this fragile plastic. Especially any of these like connector pieces and stuff that plug in to hold his vehicle mode together, not super comfortable just tabbing them in and out all the time. Even these like 5mm like posts and everything, just a little bit too much resistance there for my liking. Really just kind of spooks me a bit. And here's the regular Mirage for comparison. And you can see their heads just have a very different silhouette. They might as well be a different character, honestly. Now, me personally, I do prefer the toy accurate head, and I kind of wish that's the one we would have received in the full color Mirage. Honestly, this guy, he's really just more of a novelty than anything I feel is like a necessary figure. Which is maybe a harsh criticism of the toy, but like, honestly, I could have gone without a clear plastic Mirage. You know, it seems like more of those like special edition chase figures than anything. But he came in the 3-pack, so, you know, he's along for the ride. But I feel like such a great head sculpt is just wasted because, I mean, you can barely make out the features on him because of all the clear blue. Some people will probably disagree and they like the more cartoon accurate look of Mirage, which is, you know, up to them. But I always like this one because I found it to be very unique amongst Transformer toys. Okay, here's Impactor in his robot mode, looking very cool. You can finally see his new head sculpt, and you can see that it is just a very, very accurate recreation of his IDW look. Right down to the whole, like, Spartan fin thing going on there. And I love the greenish blue color that they use for his eyes just to add to that comic book accuracy. You can see a lot more of his construction detailing now, which if you didn't know, Impactor in those comics was originally a miner, so he just kind of kept that detailing on him. He's got some new detailing here on the chest, this little silver within the squares and underneath them. He's got yellow paint on this square here for some reason, just kind of yellow on yellow. And then his knees have been made red as opposed to yellow. Also, this little bit right here above his pelvis is unpainted, whereas the retail one, it was painted yellow. And here's the other Impactor, so you can see how they compare to each other. And this character by far is the least change out of the 3-pack. You know, new head, small paint differences, and that's really it. Obviously, the hand harpoon thing is optional. You could always take it off and give him a proper hand, but wouldn't be accurate to his portrayal in the comics. And yeah, I mean, either toy is equally viable. It just really depends on what version of the character you're looking for. If you're a big, 80s Marvel Comics fan, you want the OG Impactor, you have him, he looks great. If you want something much closer to the more modern interpretation, you have this guy, who I just think is phenomenal looking. The only thing that might really put people off is the fact that he is a Decepticon right now, which wouldn't be accurate to that iteration of the character because he never was. But, they make repro labels. And finally, we come back to Aragon. And you can see his very different color breakup in the new head really helped to set him apart from Cog. Speaking of the head, the sculpt's been particularly popular with people. And I think it's mainly because of just really all the very cool, sharp, angular detail that's sculpted into the face. They could have just gone cheap and just made this flat with some paint, but no, they didn't. He's got all those ridges on his cheeks. He's got these big old pouty lips. And, it's just meant to emulate the original toy, but give it a nice upgrade. So I think that's nice. I think he might have my favorite head sculpt out of the 3 Powerdashers. The back of his head, also, they didn't skimp on that either. He's got some cool mechanical details just like Cog does, though they are different. Speaking of Cog, here he is, just so you can see how these two stack up against each other. And like I said, they end up looking pretty different. Tolerances, are about the same on both of them, just like the other two. Here's that mechanical detailing I was talking about. See some similarities, but they're not the same. And overall, it's just cool to have yet another weaponizer who also happens to be an homage to a very obscure character. And this will hopefully help you build up your battle scenes with just more weaponizers, more armaments to go around. And speaking of those armaments, last thing I want to do is take a look at Aragon's weapon modes. And specifically in a way that matches COG's default configurations, because those kind of set the standard for what the toy can do. Alright, and this is what was known on COG as the defensive loadout. So you got back-mounted cannons, like shoulder shield here, boosters on the feet. And these guns are actually normally plugged into the host's forearms, but Mirage actually doesn't have ports on his forearms, so had to modify that a bit. But you get the general idea of what that looks like. And here, conversely, is the offensive loadout, which you can see comes with a huge upgrade in firepower. Got all sorts of cannons going on in the back. You have this shield bit, which is turning like a bit of a blaster. And surprisingly, it doesn't make them too front heavy. So, yeah, again, this was from COG's instructions. Whether or not this mode's official to Aragon, who knows? And here at the end, I'll show the unnamed configurations that the characters were utilizing in the packaging, with the addition of Aragon's little blasters because they were just left loose in the packaging. So they're more or less the same as, it's kind of a mixture of the previous configurations. Got the gun shield from the offensive, got the particular backpack bit from the defensive. Impactor's utilizing the boosters here, but they're actually turned on their side, as opposed to how COG has them, which actually supports his and Mirage's weight much better because their ports are toward the fronts of their feet, which makes them, very back heavy when you attach them the normal way. So it's got some support in the back this time, so it's actually very helpful. I don't know if this is supposed to be some kind of official configuration. It would be cool if it was. It's just a shame they didn't name it, because it would help set Aragon apart from COG in a more meaningful way. But who knows? Anyway, this is where I'm going to wrap up the review. My thoughts on this 3-pack. It's a very cool thing that we got. I think the main selling points are going to be the IDW-inspired Impactor, as well as Aragon being a new figure of a very old, very obscure character. And, weaponizer to boot. Some great paint. I mean, look at the yellow on the wheels. It's very nice. The Mirage, I'm not quite as sold on. It's neat. It is a callback to the the BotCon, I think, exclusive clear Mirage, the Holo Mirage they did, which was a redeco of the Classics toy. It's actually like the only version of that mold I don't have. So I'm less thrilled about him. So personally, I think he's just kind of the weak link. Wasn't really necessary like the other two probably were. The big downside to this 3-pack is that it's $70 on Amazon. So you are paying more than the standard cost for 3 deluxes, which is an unfortunate turnaround from trends we saw previously with like the Target exclusives, right? You got the Rainmakers were 3 Voyagers for $80, so you save $10. Here you're paying 10 extra for a set that's admittedly kind of underwhelming for the most part. I know a lot of people are kind of bitter because they only wanted 1 or 2 of the figures from the set, but they had to buy the whole thing for $70 to obtain it, and I get that. So if you're not completely sold on all 3 characters, or you really don't think the price is a fair one, you don't need to get this. You can get the regular Impactor, you can get the regular Mirage. Aragon, unless you're just a hardcore completionist, I mean, do you really need a goofy Powerdasher? Up to you. Most people I think would say no. Plus you already have COG, so you have this mold already. Or, well, assuming you have COG. You can get COG. But yeah, overall, it's a fun set. I'm happy I got it, but I wouldn't recommend it to everybody. Though that is just how I feel. I would love to know what you all think of this set in the comments section. If you did enjoy this review, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more like it or any of my other videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for sitting down with me today and taking a look at this Amazon 3-pack of these fan-voted characters, plus Aragon. And with all that said, I will see you next time.